What would you do if the criminal you were sent to catch turned out to be hiding a secret that could change everything? For undercover agent Harper Lane, this wasn't just a mission. It was a journey that would challenge her beliefs, test her heart, and leave her questioning everything she thought she knew. Harper Lane, a skilled undercover agent, is assigned to infiltrate a high-end restaurant where a notorious criminal, Ethan Cole, is rumored to be laundering money. Harper's mission is simple: gather evidence, bring him to justice, and close the case. But as she gets closer to Ethan, she discovers he's not the man she expected. The stakes are high. Ethan's operations fund dangerous criminal networks, and Harper's career hinges on this case. But when she uncovers a hidden side to Ethan, her mission becomes personal. What is Ethan hiding, and how will it change Harper's life forever? Stay with us to uncover the truth. Let's begin. Harper Lane adjusted the collar of her crisp white uniform and glanced at her reflection in the mirror. The name tag pinned to her chest read Emily, her alias for the mission. She took a deep breath, smoothing her hair into a neat ponytail. Tonight was her first shift at the Velvet Vine, a high-end restaurant known for its elite clientele. But Harper wasn't here for the food or the ambience. She was here for one man, Ethan Cole. Ethan Cole. The name had been drilled into her mind for weeks. A charming, elusive criminal who had managed to stay one step ahead of the law. His operations were rumored to fund some of the most dangerous criminal networks in the city, and Harper's team had finally pinpointed his favorite haunt, the Velvet Vine. Her mission was simple: pose as a waitress, gather evidence, and bring him to justice. As she stepped into the bustling restaurant, Harper's training kicked in. She observed everything: the layout of the room, the exits, the staff, and the customers. The air was thick with the scent of gourmet food and the hum of conversation. She spotted Ethan almost immediately. He was seated at a corner table, his sharp features illuminated by the soft glow of a candle. He looked nothing like the ruthless criminal she had imagined. Dressed in a tailored suit, he exuded confidence and charm, laughing softly at something his companion said. Harper's heart raced as she approached his table. "Good evening, sir. My name is Emily. I'll be taking care of you tonight," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Ethan looked up, his piercing blue eyes meeting hers. For a moment, Harper felt as though he could see right through her. But then he smiled, a warm, genuine smile that caught her off guard. "Thank you, Emily. I'm Ethan," he said, his voice smooth and inviting. As the evening progressed, Harper found herself drawn into Ethan's world. He was polite, engaging, and surprisingly kind to the staff. He tipped generously and even complimented the chef personally. But what truly surprised her was the way he spoke about his family. During one of her rounds, Harper overheard Ethan talking to a mysterious associate. "I'll take care of it," Ethan said, his tone softer than she had ever heard it. "But Lily comes first. Always." Harper's curiosity was piqued. Who was Lily? And why did Ethan sound so vulnerable when he mentioned her name? Later that night, as Harper was clearing tables, she found a crumpled receipt in Ethan's booth. It wasn't for the meal. It was a donation receipt for a local orphanage. The amount was staggering, and Harper couldn't reconcile this act of generosity with the man she was supposed to bring down. As Harper left the restaurant, lost in thought, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to see Ethan approaching, his car keys in hand. "Emily, it's late. Let me give you a ride home," he offered, his expression unreadable. Harper hesitated, her mind racing. Should she accept and risk getting closer to him, or refuse and potentially blow her cover? Harper hesitated for a moment, her training screaming at her to maintain distance. But something in Ethan's eyes, something vulnerable and sincere, made her nod. "Thank you, that's kind of you," she said, forcing a smile. Ethan's car was sleek and expensive, but Harper barely noticed. Her mind was racing, trying to reconcile the man sitting beside her with the criminal she had been sent to catch. As they drove through the quiet streets, Ethan broke the silence. "Long shift, huh?" he asked, his tone casual but his gaze focused on the road. "Yeah," Harper replied, keeping her answers short. She didn't want to slip up and reveal too much. Ethan glanced at her, a small smile playing on his lips. "You're new at the Velvet Vine, aren't you? I haven't seen you there before." Harper's heart skipped a beat. "Yes, it's my first week," she said, hoping her voice didn't betray her nerves. Ethan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's a tough job. I admire people who can handle it. You've got a good vibe, calm, professional. The customers must love you." Harper felt a strange warmth at his words. She reminded herself that this was part of the mission, but the way Ethan spoke felt genuine, not like the calculated charm of a criminal. As they approached a red light, Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his expression darkened. He answered the call, his voice low and tense. "I told you, I'll handle it. Just leave her out of this." Harper's curiosity spiked. Who was he talking about? And why did he sound so protective? Ethan ended the call abruptly, his jaw clenched. For a moment, the car was filled with an uncomfortable silence. Harper debated whether to say something, but Ethan spoke first. "Sorry about that," he said, his tone lighter but still strained. "Work stuff." Harper nodded, pretending to understand. "No problem. We all have those days." Ethan chuckled softly, but there was no humor in it. "You have no idea." As they neared Harper's apartment, Ethan's phone buzzed again. This time he ignored it, but Harper caught a glimpse of the screen. It was a photo of a young girl, Lily, she assumed, with a hospital bracelet on her wrist. Harper's stomach churned. What was going on? When they arrived at her building, Harper unbuckled her seatbelt and turned to Ethan. "Thanks for the ride. I really appreciate it." Ethan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Anytime, Emily. Take care of yourself." As Harper stepped out of the car, she noticed something on the passenger seat, a crumpled piece of paper. Acting on instinct, she discreetly picked it up and slipped it into her pocket. Back in her apartment, Harper unfolded the paper. It was a hospital bill, and the amount was staggering. But what caught her attention was the name at the top, Lily Cole. Harper's mind raced. Who was Lily, and why was Ethan paying for her medical expenses? Harper sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the hospital bill in her hands. The numbers blurred as her mind raced. Lily Cole. The name echoed in her thoughts. Who was this girl? And why was Ethan so invested in her well-being? Harper's training told her to stay focused on the mission, but her heart was pulling her in a different direction. The next day at the Velvet Vine, Harper couldn't shake the image of Lily's face from her mind. She found herself watching Ethan more closely, searching for clues. He seemed quieter than usual, his usual charm replaced by a distant, almost haunted expression. During her break, Harper decided to do some digging. She discreetly searched online for information about Lily Cole. What she found left her stunned. Lily was Ethan's younger sister, and she had been diagnosed with a rare, life-threatening illness. The treatment was experimental and expensive, far beyond what most people could afford. Harper's chest tightened as she read about Lily's condition. She thought about her own younger brother, who had passed away from an illness when they were kids. The pain of losing him had shaped her life, driving her to become an agent who could protect others. Now, faced with Ethan's situation, she felt a pang of empathy she hadn't expected. As Harper returned to the dining floor, she overheard Ethan arguing with a man in a dark suit. The man's voice was low but threatening. "You know what happens if you don't deliver coal. We're not running a charity here." Ethan's response was firm but desperate. "I'll get you the money. Just give me more time. And stay away from Lily." Harper's heart sank. It was clear now. Ethan wasn't just a criminal. He was being blackmailed, forced into illegal activities to save his sister. Later that evening, Harper's superior, Agent Daniels, called her. "We need to move fast, Lane," he said, his tone urgent. "We've got enough to bring Cole in. Wrap it up and make the arrest." Harper's stomach churned. "Sir, there's something you need to know. Ethan Cole isn't who we thought he was. I don't care about his sob story," Daniels interrupted. He's funding criminal networks, and that's all that matters. Do your job, Lane. The call ended, leaving Harper torn. She had always followed orders without question, but this time felt different. How could she arrest a man who was only trying to save his sister? As Harper wrestled with her decision, she received a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of Lily in her hospital bed, followed by a chilling message. Stay out of this, or she pays the price. Harper's blood ran cold. Someone knew she was investigating Ethan, and they were watching her every move. Harper stared at the chilling message on her phone, her hands trembling. The photo of Lily in her hospital bed was a stark reminder of the stakes. Someone knew she was digging too deep, and they weren't afraid to threaten an innocent girl to keep her in line. Harper's mind raced. Who had sent the message? Was it one of Ethan's associates, or someone else entirely? The next day at the Velvet Vine, Harper felt like she was walking on a tightrope. Every glance, every whisper, felt like a potential threat. Ethan, too, seemed more on edge than usual. He barely spoke to anyone, his usual charm replaced by a tense silence. Harper knew she had to confront him, not as an undercover agent, but as someone who genuinely wanted to understand his story. During a quiet moment in the kitchen, Harper approached Ethan. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice steady but soft. Ethan looked at her, his blue eyes filled with a mix of suspicion and exhaustion. "About what?" "About Lily," Harper said, watching his reaction closely. Ethan's face paled, and for a moment, he looked like a man who had been cornered. "What do you know about Lily?" he asked, his voice low and guarded. Harper took a deep breath. "I know she's your sister. I know she's sick. And I know you're doing whatever it takes to save her." Ethan's shoulders slumped, as if the weight of his secret had finally become too much to bear. "You have no idea what it's like," he said, his voice breaking. "Watching someone you love suffer, and knowing there's nothing you can do to stop it. Unless you're willing to cross lines you never thought you would." Harper's heart ached for him. She thought of her own brother, of the helplessness she had felt when he was sick. "I do understand," she said softly. "But this isn't the way, Ethan. You're putting yourself and Lily in danger." Before Ethan could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his expression turned to one of pure panic. "It's the hospital," he said, his voice shaking. "Lily's condition is worsening. She needs surgery, now." Harper's mind raced. She knew what she had to do, even if it meant risking everything. "Let me help you," she said. Ethan looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and disbelief. "Why would you help me?" Harper hesitated, then made her decision. "Because I've been where you are, and because no one should have to choose between their family and their soul." Harper used her connections as an agent to pull strings at the hospital, ensuring Lily would receive the surgery she needed. But as she made the call, she knew there was no going back. Her superiors would find out, and her career, maybe even her freedom, would be on the line. As Harper hung up the phone, she turned to Ethan. "Lily's surgery is scheduled, but there's something you need to know." She took a deep breath, her heart pounding. "I'm not who you think I am. I'm an undercover agent, and I was sent here to bring you in." Ethan's face went blank, a mixture of shock and betrayal flashing in his eyes. Before he could respond, the sound of sirens filled the air. Harper's heart sank. Her superiors had found them. The sound of sirens grew louder, snapping Harper and Ethan out of their stunned silence. Harper's mind raced. She had just revealed her true identity to Ethan, and now her superiors were closing in. There was no time to explain or apologize. "We need to go. Now," Harper said, grabbing Ethan's arm. Ethan hesitated, his eyes still clouded with betrayal. "Why should I trust you?" "Because I just risked everything to save your sister," Harper shot back, her voice urgent. "And if we don't move, neither of us will be able to help her." That seemed to snap Ethan out of his daze. He nodded, and together they bolted out of the restaurant's back door into the dimly lit alley. The cold night air hit Harper's face as they ran, the sound of shouting and footsteps echoing behind them. "This way," Ethan said, pulling her toward a parked car. He fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking, and finally unlocked the door. They jumped in, and Ethan sped off just as a police car turned into the alley. Harper's heart pounded as she glanced out the window. "They're not going to stop," she said, her voice tight. "We need a plan." Ethan gripped the steering wheel, his jaw clenched. "First, we need to get to Lily. If they find her, she's not safe." Harper nodded, her mind racing. She had already crossed the line by helping Ethan, and there was no turning back now. But as she looked at him, his face tense with worry, his hands steady on the wheel, she realized she didn't want to. As they drove, Ethan's phone buzzed. It was a message from the hospital. "Surgery successful. Lily is stable." Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, his eyes glistening with relief. "She's okay," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Harper felt a surge of emotion, but quickly pushed it aside. "We're not out of the woods yet," she said. "They'll be watching the hospital. We need to find a safe place to regroup." Ethan nodded, his expression hardening. "I know a place." They drove to an old, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. As they stepped inside, Harper noticed a faint smell of dust and rust. It was clear Ethan had used this place before. "We'll be safe here for now," Ethan said, locking the door behind them. Harper turned to him, her arms crossed. "We need to talk. You've been running for a long time, but this can't go on forever. You have to face what you've done." Ethan's shoulders slumped, and he sank onto a nearby crate. "I know," he said, his voice heavy with guilt. "But I did it for Lily. I didn't have a choice." Harper sat beside him, her tone softening. "There's always a choice, Ethan, but I understand why you made the ones you did. Now, we need to figure out how to fix this." As they talked, the sound of a car engine outside made them both freeze. Harper peeked through a crack in the warehouse door and saw two men stepping out of a black SUV. They were armed, and their faces were grim. "It's them," Ethan whispered, his voice filled with dread. "They found us." Harper's mind raced. They were outnumbered and outgunned. But as she looked at Ethan, she knew they couldn't give up. Not when Lily's safety was still at stake. "We'll fight," Harper said, her voice firm. "But we do it together." The sound of footsteps grew louder as the armed men approached the warehouse. Harper's training kicked in, and she quickly assessed their options. "We need to create a distraction and get out of here," she whispered to Ethan. Ethan nodded, his eyes filled with determination. "There's a back exit. If we can draw them away from it, we might have a chance." Harper grabbed a metal pipe from the floor and handed it to Ethan. "Stay close to me," she said. As the men kicked open the door, Harper and Ethan moved swiftly. Harper threw a piece of debris to the far side of the warehouse, creating a loud noise that drew the men's attention. In the chaos, she and Ethan slipped out the back exit and into the night. They ran through the dark streets, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. Harper's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Lily's safety, Ethan's future, and her own uncertain path. But one thing was clear. They couldn't keep running forever. As they reached a quiet park, Ethan stopped and turned to Harper. "I can't do this anymore," he said, his voice filled with exhaustion. "I'm tired of running. I just want to make things right. For Lily, for you, for everyone I've hurt." Harper's heart ached at his words. She had seen the good in him. The man who had been forced into impossible choices. "There's a way," she said softly, "but it won't be easy." Ethan looked at her, his eyes searching hers. "What do you mean?" "You need to turn yourself in," Harper said, "but not to the people chasing us. To the authorities. I can help you negotiate a deal. One that ensures Lily's safety and gives you a chance to start over." Ethan hesitated, his face a mask of fear and hope. "Do you really think that's possible?" Harper nodded. "I'll do everything in my power to make it happen." Harper contacted her superior, Agent Daniels, and explained the situation. At first, Daniels was furious, but Harper's determination and the evidence she presented, proof of Ethan's blackmail and his efforts to protect Lily, changed his mind. If he cooperates fully, we can offer him a reduced sentence and protection for his sister, Daniel said reluctantly. But this is your last chance, Lane. Don't mess it up. Harper relayed the offer to Ethan, who agreed without hesitation. I'll do whatever it takes, he said. As they prepared to turn themselves in, Harper received a call from the hospital. Lily was awake and asking for Ethan. Harper's heart swelled with relief, but she knew the hardest part was yet to come. Weeks later, Harper stood outside the prison gates, waiting for Ethan to be released on parole. He had served a reduced sentence for his cooperation, and Lily was thriving under the protection of the authorities. When Ethan walked out, his eyes met Harper's and a smile spread across his face. "Thank you," he said, his voice filled with gratitude, "for giving me a second chance." Harper smiled back, her heart full. "You earned it," she said. "Now, let's go see Lily." As they drove to the hospital, Harper felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She had started this mission to catch a criminal, but she had ended it by saving a family and maybe even herself. What would you have done in Harper's position? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping stories that challenge the way we see the world. Harper's journey reminds us that life is rarely as simple as right or wrong. Sometimes, the most courageous thing we can do is follow our hearts. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more stories that inspire, challenge, and move you